I was 9 years old, and I was living in the Sunland Park apartments in Sun Valley. Well, it was there are a couple of very vivid memories. It was the biggest one was that we were living in a fairly new construction. It was a government construction. You had to have family. It was only for families. There were like tons of kids, and the buildings just they shook like they were cardboard. The funniest memory was my stepbrother, running with his goldfish bowl, trying to get out of the place, and the goldfish flew out, and he was trying to grab it and off the floor and put it back into the goldfish bowl. So that was that. The other thing that was there are a few very stark memories. One of the really interesting things was, for some reason, the way those buildings were built, all of the many of the windows on the downstairs broke, but nothing fell out of their cupboards. But upstairs where we lived, our kitchen cupboards were almost bare. Everything somehow flew out of them. So I think the way the building was working, and it was consistent of it was a very large complex. There were like hundreds of people living there. So yeah, it was my first of 3 major earthquakes that I've been in, and it was a strange time, because it was both scary but also a lot of fun. We didn't go to school for 3 weeks. We were doing a lot of things. Like every time there was a tremor, we were all running out into the space between the buildings, and it was like a giant party. There were times where my mother would freak out, and she would make us run into the field next door, where it was truly like an empty space, so no one would get hit by electric wires or anything like that. So
it was interesting because we talked to another guy who was 9 years old at the time, and he said being a 9-year-old, first thing he thought, it was an adventure more than anything else to him.
I think that especially that first one, it was, because it was such an unknown. It was like, we had, when it first started, it just was beyond us what it was. When I was an adult and in an earthquake in Mexico, and then later in I get another one in Los Angeles, it was, there's more fear, because you're like, you understand that this is what it is and that you're totally out of control. And like I said, for me, the opening of it was almost comical. Like my stepbrother was just he was juggling. My memory was almost like he was juggling a goldfish. So there was that part of it.
What was your first thought? I mean, did you think? We've had a lot of people say that they thought it was the Russians had started bombing. You grew up in an era where we still did duck and cover. Did you do duck and cover? Did you feel a nuclear war was happening or something like that? Or did you realize it was an earthquake?
I think pretty much that we knew it was an earthquake, because I remember, people yelling, like, get in the doorways. Like even then it was, but I don't think that honestly, I don't remember my first thoughts. But I do remember, initially it was like, I was standing in the bathroom doorway with my stepbrother, and everybody was kind of in a doorway. So I think that somebody in the family figured it out and yelled, just get in the doorways. So no, I don't remember doing duck and cover as a kid. Maybe we did it, but I think I was a little bit late for that.
How did your parents react? Did they just try to rush you guys out? Because you were upstairs. So you had, I'm assuming you didn't have an elevator, so you had to go down some outside stairs or inside stairs?
Yeah, no, it was a interesting construction. They built, I don't know, 30 of these same buildings. They were just 2 stories with 2 units on each side. So it was just us and one a little kind of flight of stairs going down to go downstairs. My recollection was that we were in the apartment until the initial earthquake finished, and then we went outside, and it was like once it was over, I think that there was almost a jubilant feeling, because suddenly we had, we knew almost all of our neighbors. We were one of the first people to move into this new government complex, and the kids were socializing all the time. It was kind of a, one of those, when we could go out and we could, ride our bikes from dawn to dusk, and so we were all there, and then suddenly all the families, so you had like one building and two buildings in front of us and two buildings behind us, so you had like 16 families were all in this space, and we were all like, wow, look what we just survived, because it was a big quake. It was and those buildings, I don't know if that was, I don't think that was a point where they were making earthquake resistant buildings. In a later LA quake, I lived in a building that felt like a giant picked it up and just started shaking it, because they were really built to move like this. And I was on the 4th floor, but it really was exciting, after it. We were all okay. I don't think there were any injuries where I lived.
So you lived in Sun Valley, so you're far enough away from Somar. Did you lose power? Did you lose gas, water, phones, any of that kind of stuff? You remember?
I don't remember. I know that the electricity was being turned on and off at different times, because like I said, I remember those were probably the times that my mother got really scared, because we lived in an area where you had this huge complex, and if you walked across the kind of drive that came up to the buildings, there was a massive, empty lot. And she would like make us run out there, so we were near no electric wires. For some reason, I have this recollection that the problem with the electricity for her meant wires were coming down somewhere, because there were a lot of aftershocks, weren't there? They went on for, a week or more. So
now, when you went back to school, now you had a lot of kids in your neighborhood, but when you went back to school, who had the biggest earthquake stories?
Yeah, I'm having, I don't know that I don't know if I even remembered it back when my memory was good. That's a good question. I don't remember. Not very helpful for a documentary.
No, that's okay. That's all right. And when you look back on it, we've talked to a lot of people that have their issues that relate back to the Somar earthquake. It was their first quake. They had a traumatic experience. And we've had some that, it prepared me for the next earthquake. Did you look back and have any post issues, and whether it's, you might call it PTSD or maybe not, but have you had any issues since then, as far as, dealing with earthquakes or just other issues that maybe relate back to an earthquake?
I don't think so. Again, it's, I don't find myself, afraid of earthquakes, and I guess part of that is, like I said, having survived 3 major earthquakes, and the one when I was in Mexico was almost comic, because I lived in a beach house in Acapulco when the Mexico City earthquake came, and my mother said the first news reports was that Acapulco was wiped out in a tidal wave, and we were totally cut off. We had no communication for over like three weeks out of Acapulco. And, fortunately I, sent a message to somebody going to the airport, that got her to her the day before she was going to fly down to find our bodies. So I've been on the edge of, massive earthquakes. I've seen the destruction, but no, I didn't suffer from any trauma. And I don't think that I really understood how big the earthquake was until I moved to San Fernando and then went to Somar High School. Like in high school, I talked to people who would remember the earthquake as, more terrifying than I did.
Mhm. What year did you graduate?
I graduated from Selmar in 79.
79. Um, so the three earthquakes you were in were Sylmar, Mexico City, and Northridge?
Northridge, exactly. Yeah, I lived in Hollywood during the Northridge quake in a building that it was funny because nothing broke. But it literally, the building was moving. I was on the fourth floor of a building in Hollywood that was earthquake resistant, and it was just there was nothing like, compared to the other earthquakes I'd been in, because like the Acapulco quake, Mexico City quake, I felt it, but it was nothing big, though it hit Mexico City horribly. But yeah, those are the three quakes I've been in.
Well, two things. Normally, I would be asking people about how it affected your life, but you apparently just go through earthquakes and you're fine. Just move on with your life. I am curious because you were talking about, and you said that everyone knew everyone. Did this earthquake make everyone closer, or were you already that close before all this happened?
The time following the big quake was really fun. We didn't go to school. We were out in every time there was a tremor, everybody ran out into the area between the buildings. And I think that we ended up being closer. It was the kind of thing where I think there was some sense of pride, like, wow, I was, made it through a major earthquake. And then as a kid, it was just fun. It was fun. I don't think we were, I don't remember being afraid. I remember, seeing my mother, playing the normal Jewish mother, oh my God, it's the end of the world type of thing. But for the kids, we were having a blast. It was fun.
That's fantastic.
Did you end up, you mentioned you guys would ride your bikes dusk to dawn. You go out and check out damage and that kind of thing as kids, curiosity-wise?
I remember going into friends' houses, like say, because there was this really weird thing where, like, I was a kind of a science kid, and I was trying to figure out why was it that on the upstairs. So my girlfriend, I was 9 years old. I had a very serious girlfriend. She lived in the apartment across from us upstairs, and she had the same thing. Like their cupboards in the kitchens were all open. My mother made a big thing because I can't remember if it was jam or honey or molasses. Like the kitchen floor was a real mess, full of glass. But downstairs, our friends had absolutely nothing came out of their cupboards, but a lot of their windows, the glass had to be replaced. They were broken or shattered. So, but I don't think that, I think that we watched the news and we saw, some of the bigger damage. We saw the freeways collapse in Selmar. But no, I don't think that when I was a little bit older and I was going to see a doctor in Selmar, then, we drove that, but that was probably 2-3 years later. There were still, we drove up there and we saw some of the damage.
Yeah, did check out where the hospital was and that kind of stuff? Or?
I do remember that I was going to a doctor appointment that was at kind of a makeshift side of the hospital. It was something that was had been created as an interim things. But yeah, but I do remember that it was it was at the Selmar Hospital, but it wasn't the real hospital. It was something that had been temporarily built. Even now, as you've started asking questions, you're bringing up things that I don't know that I've even ever thought of them. Oh. About the trauma. Yeah. And I make games that are connected to spreading kindness. So I consider myself a compassionate, empathetic person, but I don't know that I ever thought about whether or not people were traumatized.
What do you do in India?
Well, my master's degree is in writing theater. So I used to be a writer, director in California, but I moved here years ago to write a novel. and my ex-wife is Indian. My daughter and I live here, and now I make games. I've been making both printed card games. Here, this is a game that I've made, which teaches kids kindness. It's and then now I'm making video games.